Have you ever felt overwhelmed with all the writing advice and rules that are out there? Let me save you hours of scrolling and second guessing by giving you the one piece of writing advice that you should hold on to with a closed fist, always remember and pursue no matter what. Let's get to it. So you go to Google and you type in how to write a novel or best advice for writing a book. And what happens? Immediately, you are going to get snowed in with advice from all corners of the internet because writers of all shapes and sizes have contributed blog posts and articles talking about you should plot out your full novel and then start writing. Or maybe you should just jump in and start writing and figure out the structure as you go. Some people will tell you to get up early and write. Others will say it's best to write late at night. Maybe you should write every single day. Or other people might say, hey, maybe you only just write when you're inspired. There's so much conflicting information out there, so much advice, some of it really good, all of it well intentioned, but sometimes it can just be really confusing. No wonder you're overwhelmed. Listen, if you're just starting out as a writer, it is normal to experience self-doubt. It is normal to be confused, and it's normal to want to find what works best so that you can actually start making progress on this big goal that you have. So, if you've ever thought, gosh, this seems to be working for other people, I must be doing something wrong. This episode is for you. Let me encourage you. You're not doing anything wrong. You're right where you're supposed to be. And here's the core advice that I want to offer you in this episode because there's going to be lots of advice that you'll hear out there, lots of advice that other writers will give you, even people maybe that you know and trust will tell you about specific things that have worked for them. But the reality is, the only advice that really matters is to find what works for you and to stick with that. Keep doing that again and again and be able to flex on the fly and grow and learn and adjust. But ultimately, it's going to be up to you to find your process, to find what works best for you. Here's what happens when you do that. Number one, it stops you from comparing yourself to other writers. There is probably nothing more frustrating as a writer than looking at a formula that someone else has used and found success with and wondering why it isn't working for you. So, if you've, for example, let's say you talk to a writer who's published several books, who's found some success, and you say, hey, I want to do what you've done. How do I get there? And like most writers, they're going to be more than willing to share their advice, to share their process, and to let you know, hey, here's how I got started, here's where I went, and here's the exact formula that got me there. And it really did work for that person. But every writer is different. And so I would encourage you if that happens. So for example, they might say, hey, I got up every day at 5 o'clock in the morning and I wrote for 1 hour. I set a timer. I didn't keep track of a word count. I just got in there and started writing. And I also didn't plot it out. I was a pantser all the way. I just dove in and started going for it. But maybe you're not a morning person. Maybe you are not. You're somebody who needs a little bit more of an outline before you get started. So if you follow that approach from that writer friend of yours, you're probably not going to find the same level of success that he or she found, and you're most likely going to end up being very frustrated. And you might get to the point where you start questioning, man, that person is a writer. Maybe I'm not because I tried the exact same thing that they did and it just isn't working. But if you set out from the beginning to find your own path, to figure out what works for you, then you're free to experiment, but you're not going to be able to compare. You're not going to be so ready to compare yourself to other people. Or if you do, you're not going to realize that one is success, the other is failure. It's just different approaches. So, number one, it stops you from comparing yourself to other writers. And comparison, as you've heard, is the thief of joy. It literally robs you of the joy of the process and the success of writing. So, find what works for you. It will stop you from comparison. It will empower you to experiment. So again, there's tons of different writing advice out there. And depending on who you are and what your process, the way your mind works, some of it's going to work really great for you. Others might not. You have the freedom to test and learn. So if you've tried something out and maybe it didn't work for you the way that it's worked for other people, great. Use that information, put that to the side and try something else. So It stops you from comparing yourself to other writers. It allows you to be empowered to experiment. Number three, it also builds self trust. So the more you explore as a writer, the more you try new things and learn what works for you, the more you start to grow and develop and lean into your own strengths and skills and abilities. And we all have different levels of these as writers. The more you do this, the more you start to find out about who you are as a writer, what works best for you, and you'll become better and stronger and more efficient as a writer over time. So, you know there are probably famous examples of many writers out there who are plotters versus pantsers. You can Google that if you're not sure what that is, but lots of people do things different ways and still find success. I'm reminded of an early episode of this podcast. My friend Drew, who's a first time novelist, she said, "You know, you and I could each bake a cake, and we might put different ingredients in the cake. We might cook it at different temperatures, and we might go about it a different way. But at the end of the day, your cake is probably going to end up being delicious, and my cake is going to be delicious, and they're just going to be different cakes, and that's okay. Like everybody does this a little bit differently. So some writers might really thrive in time pressure and saying, I'm going to focus on writing sprints and high intensity, and I'm going to write for a period of time and get real success there. Others might say, whoa, that feels too much. Like I came in this to relax and to rest and to express myself creatively. So the idea of a writing sprint actually is too much pressure. I'd rather just have a slow morning journaling, right? You're building a recipe here. So you get to choose the ingredients. So take all the advice, learn as much as you can. But at the end of the day, the only advice that really matters is to find something that works for you. So here's a quick framework to help you find what works. Number one, you have to be able to experiment. So you try different methods. Maybe you flex on the timing of when you write, whether it's a morning, a lunch break, an evening. Maybe you choose a day or a couple days a week that you write, and you can vary that after you've tried it out for a little while. See what you like, see what you don't. Um, you can also try out different tools. So if you've ever written longhand in a journal, try that. Try it on your laptop. Go outside, change your environment. All of these things are ways of trying different methods. And then number two, track what feels energizing and what feels draining. I've said this before. I probably say this now on every episode, but one of my early podcast guests reminded me that writing is supposed to be fun. So there are definitely parts of it that are challenging and burdensome, but at the end of the day, this is supposed to be something that's fun and energizing. So, where you have those approaches, those moments, those seasons in your writing that feel life giving and joyful, write those down. Take note of those. I really enjoy when. Maybe for you, it's when you're writing in a notebook outside versus sitting at a desk in your computer. Whatever the case might be, track what feels energizing and also what feels draining and do more of the energizing thing and less of the draining thing. And then, thirdly, tweak and repeat. You have permission to grow, to learn, to evolve. You are not always going to be doing things the same way, and you're definitely not going to be doing things the same way as every other writer. So, feel the freedom. Think of this as a long term experiment. As you're making progress, as you're building toward your book, think of this as an experiment to learn more about yourself, to lean into your creativity, learn what lights you up, what brings joy and peace and rest into your life, and feel the freedom to make changes along the way. Also, just because something worked in a previous season for you doesn't mean it's going to work in your next season. So you may go through and write one book and do it a certain way. And then for the next one, you might try a completely different approach. Again, you make the rules here. You get to make those decisions, and you should feel the freedom to do that. So let me, real quickly before we go, I want to just give you a couple of things. So, first, I know you might be listening to something like this and think, okay, hopefully you're listening to this and thinking this is super refreshing because I've heard a lot of different advice out there. I've heard a lot of people say a lot of different things. And for whatever reason, a lot of it just hasn't worked for me. Well, let me share this to you. If this is you, you're not doing it wrong. You're not broken. You are a writer and you're in the process of figuring out what works best for you. So give yourself a break. Don't put so much pressure on yourself. Recognize that you're in this for the long game and you're learning more about yourself as a writer every single day. So, real writers don't always follow a script, they write their own. That's the point. That's the beauty of being a writer, right? We get to create, we get to make things up from nothing, which is pretty incredible. So lean into that creativity, lean into kind of what works best for you and find that rhythm. So I'm curious, a couple of questions before I let you go here. First, what writing advice have you outgrown? Is there something that someone has told you, or maybe that you've told yourself, that you've been trying to fit a square peg into a round hole by saying, I'm going to get up in the morning, even though I'm not a morning person, or I'm going to write every day, even though I'm really feeling burnt out or exhausted? Let me give you the freedom to reevaluate, to reconsider, and to release that if you've outgrown it or you need to release it today. Um, and then lastly, how can you encourage someone else with something that's worked for you? Again, sharing the writing advice is not what's the problem here. People find things that work for them and then they can't wait to share it with other people. And that's a good and right thing. The more data, the more recommendations, the more ideas we can take in, the more experimenting we can do and the more learning we can do about ourselves as a writer, which for me is the whole point of this thing. So, what has worked well for you? What can you share with another writer that may end up helping them? I'd love to know. Drop it in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. Let me know what's the best piece of advice that you've found as a writer, and maybe also include one piece of advice that hasn't really worked for you. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, leave me a review in this episode and tell me the same thing. And if you want more writing and mindset encouragement, visit my website. It's tcbird.com. Right now, I'm offering a free download, which is called 30K in 30 days. It's going to help writers like you make serious progress on their novels. So you can go to pages.tcbird.com. This is a step-by-step 4-week guide that walks you through how to make a plan, how to track your progress, and how to really get moving on your novel. So if you're feeling stuck and you really just want to get some words on the page, go download it. Again, it's pages.tcbird.com. You can get that totally free. And until next time, keep writing, and I will talk to you soon. Later.